When moving to a new area, it's difficult to know which one is which, what the differences are, because on a map, everything looks the same. So today we're going to dive in and discuss the two Indians. That's Indian Trail and Indian Land. So if you are looking for the difference and looking to move to potentially to Charlotte, North Carolina and the surrounding areas, this video is for you. Stick around. I'm going to share with you all of the secrets behind these two towns. Now, if you are looking for everything Charlotte, the good, the bad, everything in between, make sure to hit like and subscribe and stay tuned for more upcoming videos. And if you really want to stay on top of it, be sure to hit that notification button and we're going to make sure to send you every single video that I post. Now, I get calls, texts, emails, video chats every single day from people just like you wanting to move to Charlotte, North Carolina and South Carolina and the surrounding areas. If this is you, whether it's 9 days, 90 days, 9 months from now, go ahead and shoot me a text, email, send me an Instagram, send me a Zoom invite, and I'm gonna make sure to make your move exactly what you want it to be, whether it's from across the country or across town. So let's dive in. I have a lot of clients that are moving to the area, and it's become very apparent to me that the differences between different towns are a little bit challenging to understand. Now, the reason for this is, like any area, everyone has a different pocket that's maybe a little bit more expensive, offers something better, maybe has negative aspects to it as to why things are the way they are. And usually it comes down to the price per square foot. I'm gonna give you a little bit of background here. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we do not value properties based on price per square foot. Here's the reason. Every single house is different. Now, unless you are literally comparing a brand new construction home that's identical to another brand new construction home on the same type of lot in the same development, that is the only way that a true price per square foot makes sense. But here's the thing. Most of the homes that are sold in the open market are very varying and different. In fact, you could have a 3,000 square foot home over here for $500,000 and a 1,800 square foot home over here for the same $500,000, and yet they are very different. And the reason we can't do price per square foot, one might have more updates, one might be in a different area. This is why it's so important to understand the actual different areas, demographics, prices, etc., that go into the pricing of homes to make sure you get not only your biggest bang for your buck, but that you also pick the right location for you, your family, and your dog. So let's dive into the differences between Indian Land and Indian Trail. First off, there's the first most obvious part, and that's that Indian Trail is in North Carolina. Indian Land is in South Carolina. Now, the reason why these are a little bit more confusing is because they're also technically really close to each other. You could drive between the two of them in about 20 minutes, so it's kind of odd to have two different cities or towns that are named something very similar. Now, in addition to that, they're both on the south side of Charlotte. Now, I'm going to start pointing out some of the differences, and it's going to become really apparent why they are so glaringly just opposite. Let's start in South Carolina, all right? So in South Carolina, obviously, this particular town, if you were to look at a map, it actually goes ahead and it lines the border of North Carolina. So when we're talking about Indian Land, it is right on the border of North Carolina. So you've got Indian Land here. Just to the north of it is Marvin, North Carolina. Why is this important? Well, first off, Marvin, Weddington, and Waxhaw, as you probably saw in one of my previous videos, are three of the most affluent towns in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, Charlotte as a whole is a very big town, and there's pockets and neighborhoods that are very affluent. But when we're talking actual towns, these are some of the most affluent towns. Also up north, on the northern side of the city, would include Davidson and Cornelius. We're going to stick to the south side for a second. So when we're looking at Marvin, Waxhaw, Weddington, we're seeing average sales prices a lot of times up into the $700,000 and $800,000. That's right, these are really expensive areas. Now, can you find a home under $500,000? Absolutely, but you may have to alter or adjust what your search parameters are. Do not expect a 3,000 square foot home for that price range. So let's get back to Indian Land real quick. Indian Land, like I said, it's right over the border. Now, why has this become a mecca for people to move to, and why are the prices so much higher? Well, there's a few reasons to that, but the first thing I want to point out is the difference in size. Indian Land, South Carolina is 1/16 the size of Indian Trail, North Carolina. That's right, it's a very, very small town, which means there's a very tight congregation of people that live there if you're wanting to be in that particular neighborhood or town. So let's talk a little bit about why it's so much more expensive. Let's say you would like to be in Marvin. You want to spend your time in Marvin, in Waxhaw, in Weddington, those really affluent areas, but you want a slightly lower price and you want the tax advantages that come along with South Carolina. This is lower taxes, and if you are a veteran, no property taxes. That's right. South Carolina, if you are a veteran, especially if you're on 100% disability, you could live in South Carolina without paying property taxes. This is a big deal. So if you want the advantages of the North Carolina affluent towns, but you also want the advantages of the South Carolina taxes, you can live in this particular location. Hopefully this picture is becoming a little bit more clear for you. So when we're talking about Indian land, although it's very small, it is on the border and it is in these affluent areas, which is also making Indian land a very affluent town. What comes with affluency? What comes with higher prices on everything? What comes with more people flocking to that particular location? Supply and demand. The supply is rather low in the area, and the actual property prices for land are much higher, also because of the location. So what happens? The prices of homes are much higher as well. So before I get into the specifics of this, let's jump to the north side of the border into North Carolina. Indian Trail. Indian Trail is a very, I'm going to call widespread. If you look at it on a map, I know I showed a map earlier. If you look at the map of Indian Trail, it's not just this one little circle, right? It's actually got all these little fingers all over the place into different areas like Stallings and Monroe and Matthews. And that's the reason why when you're looking at homes, you could be in the area of Indian Trail, but it might say Monroe, or it might say Stallings, or it might say Matthews, because it doesn't necessarily cover just one solid circle or square in that area. It's a little bit spread. Now, with this also being said, it takes and incorporates some of those other areas into what it is. So it has a little bit of a Matthews feel, a little bit of a Stallings feel. Towards the lower quadrant, which would be the southeast side of it, has a little bit more of a Monroe feel. And in fact, I-74, which is also known as Independence if you're closer into town, does run right through it. In addition to this, in order to help Monroe grow, it became a toll road to allow people to get there faster and more efficiently. So you have that advantage as well. Now, here's one of the biggest differences. If you notice, the towns that are around it aren't labeled as affluent. They aren't more wealthy. They have your middle class, which is a wonderful thing. I'm there with you. But they have that type of price point when it comes to homes as well. So you're looking at homes, if you want a home in the 500,000s, you're gonna get a 3,000 square foot house potentially. That is a big deal for a lot of people because you can get more space and more bang for your buck, right? So better price per square foot when we're looking at it that way. And a lot of times when you're looking at these two locations side by side, they seem on paper so drastically different. Here's the other thing. In person, they're different as well. I would say that in my personal opinion, Indian Trail has been built up a lot more because it's also closer to Charlotte than Indian Land. Now here's another advantage of Indian Trail. Again, like I said, it's closer to the city. So you have those advantages of being right off 485, having easy transport in and out of the city, down to the beach, whatever you want. Whereas Indian Land, you're farther offset from any of those major roads, which means it's gonna take you a little bit longer to get potentially to work if you're working in Charlotte and back again. Another part of that is you're probably gonna hit a little bit more traffic going to Indian Land than Indian Trail, because Indian Land is, again, further south. There's not a one main road that just gets you right there that's, 6 lanes wide. Versus Indian Trail, you have multiple interstates that are getting you there from 74 to 485 and the easy connections towards 77. So that's a big difference there if you're trying to pick commute times. So which one should you pick? Well, let's talk about some of the actual specifics of these areas, shall we? I'm a huge supporter of picking what's right for you, right? It doesn't matter whether it's the fancy part of town or the not as fancy part of town. It depends upon how much money do you want to spend on a property, what do you want out of that property, and what is your lifestyle, right? If your lifestyle is you need a lot of space because you have a lot of dogs or kids or family or what have you, or you need more space because your in-laws are living with you, you might want to look at a certain area that is going to get you within your budget. Same goes for another area. Maybe you want to be around people that are more affluent. Maybe you're okay driving a little extra. Maybe you want a little bit more country, right? Then that might be a spot for you. But if we're looking at the actual cost, I want to give you some background to show you really what those differences are. We're going to start south of the border, all right? So in Indian Land, South Carolina, the average price point is $526,000 for your average home. Now, if we're going to go north of the border to Indian Trail, North Carolina, the average price point is $365,000. That's kind of a big difference. Now, when they're doing these averages, obviously this isn't perfection, and I apologize, it's the median price point. When they're doing these medians, they're not perfect, right? We're looking at all different types of homes, all different types of locations within those towns. So there is a bit of variety. Now, I had already mentioned you get a 3,000 square foot house for $500,000. That's brand spanking new in Indian Trail. Meanwhile, in Indian Land, if you had the same the same price point of $500,000, your square footage is going to be about 1,800 square feet. We've already pointed out why that would be that way, but this is just an example of new construction versus new construction in both of those towns. It's varying, all right? So let's talk about the actual growth. Now in Indian Land, South Carolina, it's a high demand area, and like you saw on the map, it's a very small amount of properties that are available. The actual valuations went up 21% year over year from last March 2022 to this March 2023. Now on the flip side, in Indian Trail, property values actually went down 16% on average from March 2022 to March 2023. So what does that mean for Indian Trail? Does this mean that it's a terrible investment to buy there? No, not at all. Now we have to keep in mind who are the types of people that are purchasing in each of these locations. See, when interest rates went up in 2022, a lot of your mid-level individuals who potentially could afford a $500,000 house at 2.5% cannot afford that when we're looking at an interest rate of 6, 7, 8%. So when the interest rates went up, that this whole last year, guess what? Those median buyer price points, they were either not buying houses or they were offering less on houses, and the boom subsided. On the flip side, those moving to Indian Land, South Carolina, once again, an affluent area, which means potentially the individuals moving there are actually earning more on a yearly or annual basis, which means the interest rates weren't affecting them as strongly, so people were still buying there. Along with the tax incentives that are in that location and the closeness to the North Carolina border, it has a lot going for it that kept those values rising over time. What I'll also say is there was a ton of new construction that was built in Indian Land, also helping raise those price points, because new construction isn't as constrained by every other house being sold by those price points and valuations. They kind of set their own price as long as it's within reason. So now let's talk about the speed at which homes are sold in both of these areas, also telling us what's the demand and who's buying. If we're looking at Indian Land, South Carolina, last year, 2022, the average days on market was 61. So now let's take another look at how quickly these properties are being sold, which will also tell us a little bit about what's going on in the market. Last year, homes in Indian Land, South Carolina were selling 32 days on market. That's right, 32 days on market, they went under contract. Now, compared to Indian Trail, those homes were only on the market for 16 days before being sold. That's a huge difference. Now, if we look at what's going on today, as of March 2023, the average days on market for both towns is between 61 and 62 days on market, which shares with us that, well, the market is pretty even keeled when it's talking about how long it's taking for things to sell. Now, at the time that this video has been recorded, things have sped up quite a bit, but just to give you a picture of what's going on. Now, this next bit of information goes back to what I said about Indian Land expanding far quicker, especially with new construction, than Indian Trail. Remember, Indian Trail has its fingers in just about everything, so there's a lot of different towns around and in Indian Trail that are also growing, so keep that in mind. Indian Land, as of last year in March, there were 224 homes that were sold. This March of 2023, 167 homes sold. Definitely a difference, but we know that there's a little bit of lag from the market of last year. In comparison, Indian Trail. Last year, March of 2022, 88 homes were sold. This year, March of 2023, 53 homes were sold. Again, a difference, but what we're seeing is there's been a decrease in sales in both areas. So hopefully you have a better understanding of the differences between these two communities and why there's such varying and glaring differences when it comes to those who purchase there and what the lifestyle is that they desire. So which one is better? I can't exactly tell you which one is better because it all depends upon you and the lifestyle you choose. So if you're looking for some wonderful property values close to the border of North Carolina, those South Carolina tax advantages in an affluent area, definitely lean into Indian Land, South Carolina. And there's some great new construction developments, such as, in my opinion, I love it, but Walnut Creek is a great one to take a look at. Give me a call about it. Now, if you're looking to go to the north side of the border and you want to be closer to interstates, easier access to the beach, you want the feel of the city, and you love North Carolina, but you also want more square footage for a lesser price, Indian Trail is the place to go. Again, great resale homes, but there's also some phenomenal builders in the area, such as MI Homes, and I'd be happy to show you what they've got in inventory. So, this has been Kayla Lindsay. You know how it goes, whether it's 9 days or 90 days, whether you're moving across the country or just across town, be sure to give me a text, email, give me a call. Let me know you're moving. I'd love to make your move exactly what you want it to be. Until next time, I look forward to showing you around town.